brief background on what we are doing here today, just so that you understand the context in which we are moving. Some time ago, about maybe 2 years ago or so, as we began to look at the universal health coverage or the universal health care agenda in Africa certainly, we recognized that there is so much to learn from Asia, between Asia and Africa, much learning that needs to take place. So in early 2018, we began discussion with a few people, with PHFI and Institute for Development Studies in Sussex and AMREF and Takeda certainly, about discussing how can we learn from one another and leverage the knowledge that we have in the global south to push our agendas forward and to transform our health systems into more UHC-driven health systems. And so we held in 2018 our first conclave in Bangalore, and that conclave really focused around the role of innovation in accelerating universal health coverage. It was very successful, and from there we realized indeed there's quite some things that we can learn from one another, and we took this as a roadshow. We took it to the UN General Assembly, and we had a very high-level session on the sidelines of the UNGA in September of 2018. And at that time, we had, quite a bit of representation from Asia. We had India, we had Thailand, we had Japan, we had Kenya represented at the highest levels, including some of our partners such as the Rockefeller Foundation, the World Bank, and the Universal Health Coverage 2030 Global Co-Chairs. And at that high-level meeting, there was much discussion about what is the role of private sector, how do we engage in accountability, there were quite a number of key issues that were discussed. And from that global sort of high-level discussion, we agreed that in fact we need to have some dialogues. We need to have a dialogue in Asia, and we need to have a dialogue in Africa. So last March we held a dialogue in Kigali at the Africa Health Agenda International Conference. And in that dialogue, that dialogue was actually led by my colleague, Dr. Fraser Karua. Fraser, can you please stand? I know it's difficult with a cup of coffee. Dr. Karua led our dialogue in Kigali, and quite an interesting dialogue. And as a result of that, we've developed sort of a framework of, a mechanism on how we work together. And this today is really our Asia dialogue. And that's why I thank all of you from so many countries for being here at such a high level and engaging in discussion and allowing also us to look at the Asia framework and see what we can learn from one another. I can tell you that after the September UNGA side event, where our Cabinet Secretary of Health, Dr. Cicely Kariuki of Kenya, actually met with Dr. Suwit of Thailand, and after that discussion, Kenya has now signed an agreement for technical support from Thailand. So these dialogues are really important, and they're driving some decision making on the government level. And I'd like to point out Dr. Wangari, who you see, and she's also working from Kenya. She is working on our UHC drive in Kenya. And so you'll have a chance to really dialogue with one another. So just let me stop here because there's plenty of discussion that's going to be happening. And I thank you all for coming. I'd like to introduce and acknowledge Dr. Justin Wood, Mr. Justin Wood. You see, I just gave you a doctoral degree. Mr. Justin Wood is the head of Asia and the Pacific World Economic Forum. He joined the World Economic Forum in Geneva in 2015. He's responsible for the forum's activities in the Asia-Pacific region. And before joining the forum, he worked for the Economist Group in the Southeast Africa for 14 years. 8 of those years, Justin ran an economic advisory and research service covering the Asia region. His clients were governments, companies from around the world, and with deep interest in the region, and his work is focused on economic development, cross-border trade, and investment and business strategies. So I just want to acknowledge him. I think I may have even changed the agenda a little bit around. So if that is okay, I'd like to actually welcome Mr.
Well, the agenda stays the same.
The agenda stays the same, she has just told me. So let me invite actually, Justin, if you actually let me invite Priya first to set the stage for Asia, and then she'll bring you up. So my colleague, Priya Balu from PHSI.
Thanks, Esther. And I will be welcoming Mr. Justin Wood very shortly. But before that, I thought I'd use this opportunity to welcome you all. It's been a long journey, and it's been over a month of preparation and anxiety to get you all in this room. And I'm so delighted, privileged, and honored to have you here. But then, I think before we begin on this consultation on achieving UHC in Asia and Africa by scaling community and locally driven innovation, which is going to be jointly presented under the common theme of achieving universal health coverage through primary healthcare in the age of innovation and fourth industrial revolution, all very big words. I thought I'd take this opportunity to set context and more importantly, also some expectations, not only from you but from ourselves as research organizations who've been deeply invested in trying to understand the complexity of health systems in changing political contexts. So even as I speak, India goes through one of the biggest massive electoral democratic franchises in the world. We are voting for over 1.1 to 1.2 billion people, and the results will be out very shortly. Our colleagues in Indonesia are going through the same process even as we speak, and Philippines too is going through an electoral election period now. So it's a change of great dramatic flux, and health systems are going to be part of political agendas in the near future, whether we like it or not, because health defines who we are, where we will be, and what this means for the people of these countries. Health systems are increasingly complex with many, many different stakeholders, and there's an increasing interest among countries to see how regional partners are combining both public and private providers, because they form an intrinsic set of who defines communities in many of these countries. But what these systems should look like, how it should be regulated, and the balance of the system still remains unclear. And as research organizations, part of our work is really to try and understand what does the future health system look like for mixed or pluralistic health systems in many of these countries. Companies, technology actors, non-state providers bring a huge and unique set of skills and resources that can complement the public sector to achieve universal health coverage, especially for poor and vulnerable communities right up to the last mile. Asia and Africa are becoming global leaders in new technology development, and new kinds of organizations are emerging in these countries that are actually bringing the benefits of these technologies to larger populations. It's also a huge market for companies that are often based elsewhere who are investing into Asian economies and African economies. And all this has a lot of important implications for the pattern of healthcare needs, expectations of people, what they need from their health systems, and also the capacity of the health system to be able to meet these expectations. And a number of recent developments have also entailed opportunities like the wide-scale availability of generic drugs, development of inexpensive diagnostic technologies, high-level access to mobile phones and internet, the availability of, say, algorithms for common health problems, and the use of artificial intelligence to actually make these algorithms increasingly beneficial to treat common health problems. So all this has huge implications of how future health systems are going to be developed. And I'm just going to ask for the first slide. I don't have the pointer here. But as we go through today, it's really about building a big picture from multiple points of view. And as we kind of go through the discussions today, some of the things that I'd like you to think about is that One of the challenges that many of these countries have today, in addition to the growth of technology providers and private enterprise, are often weak regulatory institutional arrangements, which could often make countries vulnerable to undesirable health outcomes, market capture, politically powerful groups, promotion of unnecessary use of drugs and technologies. And part of the health systems debate is also about how do we regulate along with how do we leverage. And while it's not possible to map out a linear process for building institutions for a future health system, it's important to build a common understanding of the direction and development and the roles and responsibilities of all the different stakeholders that make up health systems today, particularly in the global south as well as in the north. And the aim of this meeting is to really contribute to a common understanding of this, identify effective ways in which non-state stakeholders could make progress towards universal health coverage, and also explore mutual understanding between both the countries. So in my second slide, what I'd like you to think about as we pose a variety of questions, both targeted and in the deep dive later today, is really what are some of these successful approaches for encouraging innovations and private enterprise into access of health services in your respective countries? How would you think about leveraging the private sector in accelerating progress towards UHC? What have been the challenges, both on the side of the government, from the perspective of innovators, and also from the perspective of the intermediaries that work with both these organizations? What are strategies for quality and cost effectiveness, which have been a fundamental issue in many, many developing health systems today in the global south? And finally, if you were to close your eyes, what would be a vision for reforming health systems? What would be an ideal health system in your country context? What do you think is the best you could achieve pragmatically with the resources you have, but most importantly, the stakeholders you have around you? So with that, I'll stop, and it's with great pleasure that I would like to call upon Mr. Justin Wood to give the opening remarks of today's session. Thank you very much.
Is to oversee all of our relationships, our projects, our interactions between the World Economic Forum and the Asia Pacific region. So it's a very great pleasure to be here today talking about healthcare, which is of course such a critical issue for the region's present and future success. The World Economic Forum is organising actually 2 days of healthcare-related activities. We're involved with 2 days of healthcare activities. The first is today, and the second is tomorrow. And as you've heard, today really is about an exchange between Africa and Asia, organised by AMREF, PHFI, and Takeda. And I think it's a fantastic initiative because there are so many different ways of approaching the subject of UHC. And the ability to share those ideas and approaches and to debate and discuss what's worked and what hasn't in different contexts, I think is hugely valuable. And so I think that today promises to be extremely valuable for everyone. Tomorrow, we are changing the focus slightly, and we are doing a deep dive into the context of Vietnam. And in particular, we're going to be looking at primary healthcare and models that can help to deliver primary healthcare within Vietnam specifically. So I think today is a broader discussion, promises to be, I think, hugely interesting. Tomorrow we're going to deep dive into the Vietnamese context. Some of you may not be familiar with the World Economic Forum. We are an international organisation based in Geneva, like many of the other international organisations. And our role is to be the organisation for public-private cooperation. So we focus on very big global challenges that no one stakeholder group can solve on their own. Business can't solve it, government can't solve it, civil society cannot solve it. The only way to address these big challenges is to bring all the stakeholders together to work collaboratively. And that's really our role, is to convene the different stakeholders so they can take collective action in thinking about these problems coming up with solutions and launching and catalysing initiatives. So we focus on many things. We look at the future of energy, we look at the future of environment, we look at the future of trade, the future of food, the future of jobs. But one of the very big areas that we spend a lot of time thinking about is the future of health and the future of healthcare. And I think the reasons for that are obvious. Vibrant, dynamic societies need vibrant, dynamic people. And you can't have vibrant, dynamic people if you don't have quality healthcare and well-run, well-managed, well-functioning health systems. So building those systems, we feel, is of course a moral imperative. We have to do it. But it also makes profound economic sense as well. There was a study by the Lancet Commission recently that estimated that for every $1 that you invest in healthcare, the return on that $1 is between $9 and $20. So healthcare, as well as being a moral imperative, is a hugely beneficial economic lever with which to help economies grow and function well. At the World Economic Forum, our platform for global health and healthcare has many projects, many initiatives that we've launched and are running. But I think at its heart, we're trying to address one question. We know the world population is growing. It's going to exceed probably $9 billion by 2050. And so the question that we're looking to answer is, how can the world deliver affordable and quality healthcare for 9 billion people by 2050? That's the question at the heart of everything we do. And in answering that question, we, as I mentioned, take a very multi-stakeholder approach because we feel this is the only way, by bringing all the stakeholders together that we can make progress. So we work with just over 60 private sector companies. Many of them are here today. I think Fullerton Healthcare, Takeda, Philips, Novo Nordisk, to name a few. We work closely with governments. We work with governments all across the ASEAN region, but of course also in Africa and Latin America and North America and Europe. Next week, for example, there is a gathering in Geneva by the World Health Organization of health ministers from around the world. And at the same time, we will be convening those health ministers at our head office in Geneva to talk about some of the work that we're doing and get them more involved there. We also work with all the international organizations like the WHO, ADB, the World Bank, United Nations, and so on. Civil society organizations, grassroots technology pioneers, of which there are some interesting examples here in Vietnam, are also just as important. So we really try to take a truly multi-stakeholder approach. We feel this is the only way to develop a truly inclusive and holistic approach to healthcare transformation. The theme of today's meeting is universal health coverage by scaling community-driven innovation. And I think this concept of community-driven is really just another way of saying multi-stakeholder. It means engaging all the actors in a health system, from frontline health professionals to drug companies to the users of health systems, working together in really trying to come up with new and innovative ways for thinking about providing universal healthcare. I think it underscores the fact that innovation anywhere, particularly in healthcare, is an intersectoral enterprise. It really requires everyone to contribute in order to come up with genuine understanding of problems and then innovative approaches to addressing those problems. Governments, of course, have a key role to play in designing UHC legislation, but it cannot do alone. And we feel that in order to implement its policies, as well as to design those policies, we need the full ecosystem. And that, I think, is particularly true of the private sector. Businesses are critical. They really are able, I think, to do the deep thinking and work on the design of sustainable business models and to help build the capacity for genuine and true public-private cooperation. The topic, I think, of UHC is particularly relevant. It's important, of course, in many ways, but it's particularly relevant this year because, as many of you didn't no doubt know, the United Nations, when they convene their General Assembly in New York in September, the high-level meeting on the stage will be dedicated to universal health coverage. And the heads of state that attend that meeting will be coming together to sign a new declaration and expression of dedication to to achieving UHC. I think that the discussions that they have there no doubt will accelerate progress towards UHC, and will cover many, many critical issues from building sort of skilled labour in the health system to funding models and so on. And so I think this workshop today and the sharing that I hope will be achieved is very much in line with global priorities as expressed by that desire of the heads of state to come together and reaffirm their commitment to achieving UHC. Finally, let me just say how exciting it is to be here in Vietnam. I think there are many interesting examples of healthcare innovation happening here in Vietnam. And no doubt those examples will be shared with you during the discussions today. But to give you one example, the Vietnamese government recently launched the National Immunization Information System, which is a digital register and stock management tool that was developed by PATH, an NGO. And those innovations under this immunization information system have massively increased the on-time vaccination rates and reducing the time and costs associated with routine immunization programs. The health workers here in Vietnam can now create and search for immunization records really on any device that they have, be it from a mobile phone or whatever. And they can send texts to families to remind them to come and get their children immunized and so on. It's I think, a great example of innovation that's happening. And there are many other examples here in Vietnam. So I think it's a very apt location for us to be holding this workshop and for holding these conversations. So let me end there, because I'm sure that there's so much sharing that you want to do. The time will be better spent in that. But I think that it is going to be a fascinating day. I think there's a huge amount of ideas, both in Africa and in Asia, that can be shared productively. So I wish you all the best of luck for a very productive workshop for the rest of today. Thank you.
That was very well put, appreciated. I would like to move the agenda forward and invite our colleague, Dr. Wangari Nganga, to join me. Dr. Nganga is the Universal Health Coverage Technical Advisor in the Executive Office of the President of Kenya, and she will be moderating this session.
Good morning. I actually expect an answer. Good morning. I want to start by making several apologies. It is 5:30 a.m. in Nairobi, so I'll just be waking up. If I do sound like I'm just waking up, please forgive me. It was quite a journey to Vietnam, but we are here, and we are grateful. I also want to apologize that I'm not going to sound as academic as I probably should. Because I don't think this is the forum to sound academic, is it? No. It's not an academic forum. It's time to talk about real health problems, real health systems, about real people. Yes? And then I'm going to attempt to be the whole of Africa. I do think I represent Africa. I'm still youth. Yes, we can guess how old I am. I am female. I'm not sure if I look like it or not, but I am the other majority in Africa. And I am a practitioner of a health system, so I am going to attempt to reflect Africa through the conversation we're going to have with my colleagues this morning. And my last assertion is, I want to try and attempt to bridge that gap between looking at health systems as some, epidemiological statistics, some numbers, what percentage are you at UHC, those kind of fantastic numbers we like to publish, and bridge it with the one human being. Let's remember that for that one individual, it's 100%. For me, if I got malaria and I didn't get well, it doesn't matter how good the statistics are in Kenya. For me, it is 100%. You can't generalize that. Yeah? So let's remember that in this morning's conversation reflecting on the role of private sector in health systems. I have a panel that reflects my everyday, very government heavy. I like these people, they are my people. So kindly indulge me as I introduce my panel this morning. And as I call you up, please join me on stage. Mr. Rohit Jha. Dr. Rohit Jha is the Deputy Director of the recently launched Ayushman Bharat Scheme or the National Health Protection Scheme in India. Dr. Jha is a civil servant who has several years of experience in various sectors of government. He has played a critical role in shaping the National Health Protection Scheme. Dr. Jha, thank you very much. Dr. Shirley Lords Domingo. Sorry, I'm going to stop here just because I'm done. Do we have protocol for sitting, or we sit how we like? I will assume we sit how we like. Dr. Shirley Lords Domingo. Yes. Dr. Shirley Lords is the Vice President of Corporate Affairs at PhilHealth. She's a medical doctor by profession. She has been with PhilHealth since 2002 and has also served in the Department of Health in the Office of the Secretary. Dr. Domingo, thank you very much. Dr. Maya Rusadi. Dr. Maya Rusadi is the Director of Health Services at the BPJS. I am not going to attempt to pronounce that, which manages Indonesia's National Health Insurance Scheme. She will teach me when she's on panel. Dr. Lee Van Kam. Dr. Lee, yeah, good morning, is the Director of the Health Insurance Department of the Ministry of Health in Vietnam. Dr. Kam is in charge of development and promulgation of health policies. Dr. Mohammed Safi bin Ismail. Dr. Ismail is the Senior Principal Assistant Director at the Ministry of Health in Malaysia. Dr. Ismail manages the primary care portfolio at the Ministry of Health. And then I have Dr. Umanat, who is the Managing Director at the Tamil Nadu Medical Service Corporation in the state of Tamil Nadu in India. A civil servant, he has served in the government for over 18 years. In the past, he has served as the District Collector of Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu, and Joint Secretary at the Finance Department, Government of India. Okay, Dr. Ismail, I like you. They put you there twice. I'm sure that is it. Thank you so much. No, it's fine. Right, so I think I'll start from my immediate left, Dr. Ogunat. And I'm just going to ask each one of us in the panel this morning to take a chance to reflect on a key question this morning, which is how governance, leadership, and political environment has impacted the health system capacity in your country. And we'll start with you, Dr. Ogunat, just taking a reflection on the impact of governance, leadership, political environment in Tamil Nadu. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to thank the organizers of the event for inviting the government of Tamil Nadu to participate in this event. To answer the question of the moderator, Tamil Nadu is a state with a population of 18 million in the southernmost part of the country, and it has the best health indicators in India. In fact, it is a state where most of the health goals of SDG have already been achieved, and we are setting the goals even higher levels. The one principal factor which has driven this change has been the continuing and unwavering political commitment to healthcare delivery. For the last 50 to 60 years, the state government has continuously invested at all levels of healthcare. Today, there's a lot of focus on primary healthcare as a bedrock for UHC, but we all know that government's ability to provide primary healthcare depends upon the availability of medical personnel who are being trained and come out of tertiary healthcare facilities. So the government of Tamil Nadu has continuously invested in tertiary healthcare facilities while continuing its primary healthcare. To put it in perspective, Tamil Nadu, the state stands 6th in population in India, but it has the highest number of state-funded tertiary healthcare institutions in the country, and it also has the highest per capita bed availability of government health institutions in the country. This has helped us. This commitment by the political leadership as by governance has helped us to deliver healthcare by continuing to supply a steady number of health professionals who continue to man both the government facilities as well as private facilities. And to just add to it, in terms of per capita spend, in terms of the share of public funded health expenditure in the state budget, that is the subnational budget, Tamil Nadu also has had the highest share in India for a very, very long time. Today we are not the highest, but for a considerable time in the past we were the highest. Now since the other welfare schemes are also taking place, its relative share might have come down marginally, but we continue to be among the highest. This continued support has helped us to deliver public health system at all levels, and it has also helped private healthcare.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Uman. I move on to my panelists just next to you from Malaysia and take the same question, really very brief introduction of the health system in Malaysia and how governance, political leadership has impacted the health system.
Thank you. Let me take this opportunity to thank the organizer on the PHFI and Akeda. This is all new names to me. Thank you for inviting us to participate in this, I think, very important workshop and session. I think for the country, for Malaysia, quite similar to the Tamil Nadu, we have a very high level commitment for the political will, and for it's also a priority of the government of Malaysia. Health is also a priority. And in terms of budget, every year, almost every year, we are the second after the education. Education is first, second is mental health. Like last year, we got 26 billion for the health, for MH to spend on health. And the primary health care is always our priority. I think since independence in 1957, during that time, we have a problem with maternal health, so we invested a lot on maternal health, and we were able to reduce the infant mortality, maternal mortality, and it's quite comparable with the developed nation, even with the amount that we spend. We are very proud of that. And of course, we have many challenges. Because of the resources, the healthcare cost is escalating every year, and we need more resources to be able to deliver that. But in terms of budget, it doesn't commensurate with the amount of work that we need to do, because the politicians expect a good outcome, a good image internationally, but they are not given enough, not enough funding for healthcare so that we can sustain that. So this is a big issue now, because are we going to can sustain this kind of system? So that's why Malaysia now is looking at the trying to transform our healthcare system, especially looking at the service delivery, financing, and also the governance structure, whether the MOS should have a new role. Now, like in your country, public sector is dominant. We have a mixed system, public and private. The public sector is responsible for 80% of the service delivery, but the huge amount of resources are in the private sector. But they see less, they provide less services, but they have more resources. But the government sector, we have the resources, but we have to cater for bigger population. It's always a challenge to balance up between what is the expected outcome and also the impact of the health. But with the amount of budget that we have been having, and over the years, I think the GDP, total of expenditure out of GDP is always 4%. We should say at least 6%. But with 4%, there's so much we can do. I think that's the beginning of the episode.
Thank you very much. And just moving on to to the next panelist, just to take a quick reflection on really the same question. Just introduce to us your health system and probably give a reflection of how government and private sector are working together in your health system.
Come, there's another one.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm very happy to be here to provide you some critical information in relation to the Vietnamese health insurance in the context of universal health package. First of all, I would like to emphasize that our government regards health as a high priority in the government agenda, of which health is recognized as both means and the end of the development. Investing in health is investing in economic and social development also. And the government plays a central role in protecting population health. Regarding to the universal health insurance coverage, the government has made a commitment to achieve universal health coverage and recognizing health financing as important means to achieve that goal. Accordingly, the government allocated tax revenue for health. However, the allocation from the tax is not enough. So our government embarked on health assessment and social health insurance 27 years ago to mobilize the more resources for health. Today, the social health insurance system covers about 88.5% of population, mostly on compulsory basis. All the poor, ethnic minority, and children and other vulnerable groups are covered in the system via revenues. Our health insurance law requires compulsory environment by all, but there is still nearly 12% of population. Most of them are self-employed, not involved into the scheme. How government commitment and incentive for health sector, I would like to inform you that over the last few decades, the government has introduced a number of financing incentives to mobilize more public financial resources for health. The government has policy on health care such as increase the level of public expenditure on health, especially in the form of health insurance premium subsidy for the vulnerable group. Expand the cover to near poor and farmer and school people. The government also commit to ensure adequate budget for priority public health program and assessment preventive medicine service, while personal treatment and care will be funded via health insurance scheme. Along with the getting health promotion fund made from the e-market fund from tobacco company and other synthetic company also. We also provide the level playing field for and encourage all actors, public and private, in providing healthcare service. I mean that now the government have a plan to encourage the people enjoy private health insurance together with public health insurance together. So that as you may know that. Right now, the rate of our public reduced from 65% in 2000 to 39% at present. Yeah. So, however, we think that we are still coping with many challenges in terms of equality, efficiency, and quality. So we need to expand the health insurance coverage for all population. It means nearly 12 million people are still out of the health insurance scheme. And The second thing is to upgrade the capability of the health facility, especially in the remote area where it's almost poor people and ethnic minority living there, but the health facility there is still limitation in terms of scope of health specific provision also. And then I want to inform you that maybe tomorrow we will have a lot of opportunity to learn about the Vietnam context in terms of primary health care. But the thing I would like to emphasize that we need to rearrange the service delivery model because we are coping with the both infectious disease and non-communicable disease also. So the government also arrange a public demand for access to quality and safety service. So in this process, we need to be supported by the development partner and other expertise to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Dr. Rusadi, I think the common theme that's emerging here is that health is quite clearly a high agenda in every government. I do remember the Indonesia's National Health Insurance Scheme probably started very similar to ours, very politically driven from the highest office. Why don't you give us a quick reflection on the Indonesia's National Health Insurance Scheme, participation in both public sector and in private?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share about how Indonesia is struggling for the universal health coverage with national health insurance. So, as you know, Indonesia is an archipelago country with more than 17 islands, around 260 million population, and we have before 2014. There is no access to healthcare for the poor and indigent properly. So this is become the strong commitment from the government to state the action. So since 2014, we implemented the national health insurance. It's called Jaminan Kesehatan Nasional, or we may call JKN in Indonesia. Since 2014. Before that, we have many schemes for insurance for military, social insurance for the civil servant, for the workers, and a little bit for indigent. But it doesn't really work well because they were fragmented. So the government came to the very strong commitment to make some one action to the national health insurance with universal coverage 90% of the population within 2019. This is a very ambitious because now we are already achieved 83% of the population join this program. So this program arose in January 2014 and it's compulsory to all citizens and based on solidarity, so the health people have the sick people, and then the government already setting all the regulation about the premium, which is for us is still challenging because the premium is not setting by actuarial compared to the benefit. The benefit is very kind. A lot of things being covered, and then the provider payment is already stated by the Minister of Health within by capitation for the primary care, and then Indonesian case-based group based on DRG for the hospitals. And also the benefits already defined by the regulations. So BPJS Kesehatan as the body that appointed by the regulation to provide all these programs in Indonesia. Of course, the GKN rapidly increasing. So the access to the healthcare and the demand of healthcare services, especially for the poor and the indigent people, which is the bottom of 40% of the population based on the income. So this is a very strong commitment from the government. And of course, responding to this, the government really know, and we all stakeholders commit that the growing of the healthcare needed from the participant, the population, it cannot be done by BPJS Kesehatan only. It should be done by all the stakeholders, and we need to do a partnership with all the private sectors. So this is the strong commitment from the government and the private sector also. We already working with around 23,000 primary care facilities, which is 57% of the primary care is private sectors, and then around 2,400 hospitals, which is 63% is private hospitals, already joined to this program. And with this 5 years implementation from 2014, the utilization of this program is already around 640,000 utilization per working days. So it's a big data, big transaction every day in BPJS Kesehatan, and we are working to have this all kind of information by online system, and the payment for these healthcare benefits from 2014 is already achieved 344 trillion rupiah, or we can say it's around 24.5 billion US dollars. And then 20% of this goes to the primary care and 80% goes to the hospitals. And this is still the burdens because many diseases that should be finalized in primary care, they were referred to the hospitals. And this is still the problems because the non-communicable disease, 68% are there in the hospitals. So we have a strong commitment between Ministry of Health and all stakeholders, including the education, how to get these people more, like we say, promotive and prevention programs more intense. So this is the information from BPJS Kesehatan, and also to have the good quality of the healthcare services. Now we are already implementing the pay for performance system in the primary care, and then to work in the hospitals. So that's for the opening information.
Thank you. So that's a lot for opening. Thank you so much for that introduction into the Indonesia health system. Dr. Domingo, I want to give you a chance to reflect on field health. Field health has been known in the region for health technology assessment with our counterparts, Thailand, and more recently for signing the UHC bill, right? Again, very strong political lead right from the President's office. Maybe just take a quick reflection on how field health is reflecting HTA, the provision of services, both in public and in private sector.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting the Philippines, Field Health specifically, to join this dialogue. Last February, as you mentioned, the Philippines signed, our president signed into law, a bill on, or a law on universal health care. It's not, this law set the policy environment and showed a very strong commitment of our government towards further improving or reaching our universal health care. I say further because we're not starting from scratch. We already have several achievements in the area of universal health care. Anyway, in terms of coverage, this law seeks to ensure that all Filipinos are automatically enrolled in the National Health Insurance Program and that they are automatically eligible to avail of the benefits. And that's really a big challenge for us in operationalizing that. In terms of service delivery, we also try to integrate under this law all services from the primary care level, secondary, tertiary, rehabilitative, and palliative care. We integrate these also, and we are also integrating our healthcare delivery system under the provinces. We have 81 provinces, meaning that the public and private healthcare providers, we will encourage them to integrate their services, especially in areas where that's geographically isolated and there are no government presence. So we need the private sector in, and it's under the law that we have to encourage the development of these networks. One big challenge also is the provision that says there will be one special health fund integrating all the funds in that network. And that's really a challenge to make the private sector especially accept that. So we're into that now. We also, I said earlier that the PhilHealth or the Philippines already is moving towards universal health care. So currently, we are already 98% covered our population. And for the remaining 2% that are not covered, we have this scheme whereby those who are not members of the Philippine, the National Health Insurance Program, if they are needing already health services at the point of service, then they will be assessed whether they're financially capable or not. And if they're not financially capable, the Philippine government will pay for the premiums and they can avail there and then. So because of this scheme, we're almost really 100% covered. But the law seeks further to improve the mechanism for enrollment. So we are also, under the law, there's also this focus on primary health care because we have a provision that says all Filipinos will be registered with a primary care provider, and the first contact will be with this primary care provider who will serve as navigator in the whole health system. If they need higher levels of services, then this navigator will help them achieve or go into these higher services. So, you mentioned the HTA, the Health Technology Assessment. Although previously we have some achievements in that area, but under this current law, it is necessary and mandatory. Well, not really mandatory, but we have, before coming out with benefits, the PhilHealth has to pass through this health technology assessment to determine whether the benefits were coming out would be feasible and relevant to the current situation. Maybe in terms of funding, we will need a lot of funds to implement all provisions of this law. What the law did was to unify all sources of funding towards healthcare, meaning one fund would be from our Philippine Charity Sweepstake Office, which handles the lottery in the Philippines. So almost 40% of their charity fund will go to PhilHealth. PAGCOR, which is our corporation in charge of putting policies for casinos operating in the Philippines, will also give us their fund, national government funding portion of their fund, also to fund this universal healthcare implementation. The DOH, the Department of Health, will also contribute to the funding because they currently have also a funding charity fund to fund medical services. So this portion of the fund will also go to PhilHealth to implement universal health care. They have also this big funding for health facilities. Now this will not go to PhilHealth, but they were given a big funding for this because obviously not all areas have good facilities. Therefore, for universal health care to work, we have to have good providers, because no matter how good our benefits will be, if there's no providers there in the periphery, in the field, to deliver our benefits, then there's nothing that we can offer them. So hand in hand with improving the services of PhilHealth, we are also improving the facilities, and this will take time. And therefore, one big challenge really in implementing this law is one to manage the expectations of Filipinos. Because when this law was passed, everyone thought when this will be implemented that everything is free, everyone is eligible, and we know that's not true. Because as I said, there are building blocks here. We have to improve the healthcare delivery system. We have to come out with better benefits, etc. So managing the expectations. Maybe the other challenge is, although we have several funding sources, the challenge really is encouraging also the private sector to come in because of the special health fund that I mentioned, wherein the integration of the funding in the community will be just one for the healthcare provider networks, and PhilHealth will work with or contract with that network instead of individually. So that's really a big challenge. Lastly, before I end, I would just like to talk a little about our information system. Currently, we are already collecting information data from our primary care providers and our hospitals. But the law further improves this IT system and mandates all those related to health, like the pharmacies, all hospitals, all primary care providers should contribute into that data system, should send data into the information system. And that's something big that we have to manage in our IT area. So that we are really looking forward to implementing the universal healthcare, but there are really a lot of challenges along the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Domingo. And lastly, just to introduce the National Health Insurance Scheme in India, Dr. Jha.
Fixing a healthcare problem of 1.34 billion people is not only a daunting task, but will also determine the world's performance in Sustainable Development Goal over the coming decade. So, without India performing well, it would be very difficult for us to fix or achieve the goals for SDGs. Before I go to the explain what we call it Ayushman Bharat. The Ayushman is a Sanskrit word which means you should have a long life. The program name is Ayushman Bharat. Before I explain that, I would give you a context of why this program was brought. That is important for us to understand. The government expenditure in the public health in India is roughly 1.3% even today, and this is though government is targeting for 2.5% of GDP by 2025. We are spending something around $21 billion for the public health, but we are expecting it to go to 8.6 trillion Indian rupees by 2020. And the deficit you can see is very huge. Deficit is really huge. What we are trying to achieve and what we are actually doing right now. In terms of insurance coverage in India, we are covering just 34% of. Before this program was launched, we were able to cover just 34% of the population. So the insurance coverage, and of these, 80% of all the persons covered for insurance were from government-sponsored schemes. So you can see the penetration of private insurance was very less, almost to the extent of no presence. And the per capita expenditure for a person visiting a hospital was roughly around $15 to $30 annually. And we are also facing challenges in implementing the World Bank's minimum living wages, which is something around $2, $3, not more than that. So in fact, we conduct national survey, and we found that the one-time hospital expenditure is roughly around $213 to $350. So one time if you go a hospital, you visit a hospital, the expenditure would be something around $213 to $350. That's very huge for a country like India. Now, the another challenge we were facing is that before this program came, almost all the programs the government of India was targeting towards the supply side. Though we were not really targeting the demand side, And in a democratic nation like India, it is very essential that the people have choices. And the new public administration theory also talks about that everyone should have a choice. Only then you can empower the beneficiary if they have the choices. Now coming to the Ayushman Bharat. Before the Ayushman Bharat, we had a precursor in the form of RSBY, which is again called typical Hindi name Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana. And this was a precursor to Ayushman Bharat, but it was catering to only the secondary care, and not only in terms of the extent, but also in terms of coverage. The WHO or USCQ, I would call it somewhere, it falls into 20% of the current Ayushman Bharat in terms of the depth of the coverage, in terms of the extent of the coverage, in terms of the population we were catering to. This Ayushman Bharat project has two pillars. The first one is health and wellness care center. We are trying to, which we are rolling out. We are planning for 150,000 health and wellness care center across the country, and these are basically targeted at developing the PSCs, primary health care centers, into the model healthcare providers. Because another pillar, this health and wellness center is planning to target the primary health, and with regards to the secondary and tertiary, we have another program which I am going to talk at little length here, and this is called the other part of the Ayushman Bharat. This is called PMJAY. This is again a typical Hindi name, which is Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. Pradhan Mantri stands for Prime Minister, and Jan Arogya Yojana is People's Welfare Program. And this is what you call in English National Health Protection Program. So I will explain you this before I explain the operation. I would like to give you some figures which would be very mind-blowing for you, mind-boggling for you, for the region that India, which is having a population of 1.34 billion, every figure is mind-boggling. And here we are covering around, the program is covering around 500 million individuals. 500 million individuals we are trying to cater to the healthcare services here. And when we add to the extended services provided by, we have around 36 states and union territories in our country. So if we extend the additional coverage provided by these states, then the figure would raise by another 130 million. And figure would raise by another 150 million, and so we are basically covering 650 million people through this program. This is like we are a federal structure country, so this is partially funded by the center and partially by the states. Like Dr. Umanath has told you right now that he is representing one of the most developed states of the country, our country. This healthcare program is 60% is sponsored by the central government and 40% is sponsored by the states. But this figure slightly varies for little underdeveloped or which are for the states which are challenged by the infrastructure requirement. The coverage, if we talk about the depth of the coverage in Indian terms is INR 500,000, but in US dollar terms it is roughly around US dollars 7,124 or 7,124. In this health benefit program, we have identified 1,400 health benefit packages. We have basically divided different types of diseases and the cure in different packages in terms, because we want to regulate, we want to keep a track of that if you have fever, you should be treated for fever, you should not be treated for, if you can be treated, if you have a heart disease, if you can be treated through the stent, then it should be related to a stent, you should not go for a bypass surgery, right? So we have to keep a check over the services being provided. We have divided the packages into 1,400 health benefit packages. We have empaneled private and public hospitals. 15,000 private and public hospitals have been empaneled to provide these services. I was listening, it was 2,400 for Indonesia. So you can imagine the degree for India. It is almost like not just, it is almost like 6 to 7 times more hospitals, and it is just a smaller part of that because we have launched this program just last year September. It is 8 months since then, and we have much to do. Of the 15,000 hospitals we have empaneled, 50% is from the private sector. We have around 69% multi-speciality hospitals covered in this 15,000. As of now, if you talk, these were the supply sides. Now I'm talking about the demand side. The demand side, as of now, we are able to enroll 33 million people for these services, who have enrolled to avail these services. We have provided the service to 2.3 million people in just a period of roughly 225 days, and they have availed the services of cost INR 31.38 billion. And another thing I would like to bring here, the cost of the health benefit packages are 50% of the regular market cost. So that way, if the people have availed the services of around 31 billion INR, then there is a saving of 2 times that is around 62 billion INR is the saving for people. Otherwise, that would have come from the pocket, because in India, out-of-pocket expenditure before this program was roughly 60% of the health expenditures were made to the out-of-pocket expenditure, and every year around 60 million people were badly affected financially to meet their healthcare issues. Now, what are the USPs? These were the figures I was talking about. If you talk about the USPs of Ayushman Bharat project, our project basically catalyzes a movement for high margin, low volume business model to a low margin, high volume business model. Because if you look at the volume, as I told you before, we are catering to 650 million people. So even if we are going through a private insurance model, because we have, and in terms of model, we have 3 models. 3 models in the sense that we being a federal structure, we are giving it, we are giving the flexibility to the states that either they can outrightly go through a private insurance model, means they can go for a bidding and they can identify the insurance company, the private insurance company who will quote the lowest for the premium cost, and he would be responsible for providing or reimbursing the hospitals for the services being availed. Apart from that, we have another model where states are saying that okay, the provinces in the general parlance, the provinces would basically set up their own trusts, and they would decide that if the hospitals are giving the facilities, the provinces themselves will reimburse the hospitals for the payment for the services availed. There is another model where it is a mixed model. It is insurance company as well as the estate trust. So they are basically capping the services to roughly 100,000 in INR being provided by the insurance companies, and beyond that it is provided by the trust model. Why? Because most of the healthcare services availed are towards the lower level. They will be roughly around 70 or 80 US dollars, not more than that. So we are as a strategic purchasing, I would call it as a matter of strategic purchasing. The cost, this mixed model is being adopted, and this flexibility has been given to the complete flexibility has been given to the state to adopt what model you would like to choose. In some part of our discussion today, you would allow me to speak about how we are catering to the requirement of federal structure. That itself is a big challenge. We have a very, very strong federal structure. How we are able to convince the states to come and on board with our program, that itself is a big achievement for our Ayushman Bharat project. And now this program has, if I talk about apart from the major USPs, as I told you, for the first time, the payers has been the caretakers has been made the payers. Like if I talk about 650 million people, out of this 650 million, almost like if I forget about the state insurance which was provided initially, almost each one of them are in our terms they are called BPL. BPL is basically below poverty line people who are really not able to afford the healthcare services. They were the actual needy. Initially they can be treated like a free riders by the private hospital, but now they are empowered like a payers. They are payers. So that has brought equity in a massive level. It is access, it is equity, and it is quality. Quality by way of that we have brought the private hospitals on board. And another thing in this program, another beauty of this program is that with regards to the public hospital, what we have done, that even public hospitals are reimbursed for the services they are providing to the patient. So look at the beauty of the structure. The government is paying for the premium cost, and the government-run hospitals are basically reimbursed for the services they are rendering to the people. And these payments can be used for the purpose of building up the infrastructure, for the purpose of incentivizing the doctors, and that is how we are empowering the beneficiary. Tomorrow, yesterday, when the below poverty line people, or when the deprived people, or when vulnerable people were going to the hospitals, they were not able to avail the quality care. But today, they will be able to avail the quality care. That is what we are expecting, because they will be paid. They are not the free riders. For each of the services being provided by the private or the government hospital, they will be given a payment for that. Now, if I look for the what we are deciding in the future, the challenges, major challenges for us right now is ensuring the quality of the service. Quality of service is still, this is like I told you, the cost of services we are providing is roughly 50% of what actually the market cost is, and there comes the challenge. There comes the challenge because when a private hospital would have the choice to choose between one who can pay for 100% and one for whom he is paid just 50%, you can obviously think that they will go for the 100% from where they would be getting 100%. So now we have to ensure that these people who are being paid through the Ayushman Bharat, they should have equal access to the hospitals as their counterparts in the this one. There are many other issues. I can talk on length over this in the rest of our plenary discussion here. But at the end of the day, I would say that we are on the right path of achieving a universal healthcare. The World Health Cube will be gradually, the coverage of World Health Cube will be expanded over the coming years, and we will be able to achieve a healthy nation, a target of a very healthy nation, and SDG goals.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jha. So passionate, so well prepared to be an ex-politician, maybe. But doing really, you got extra minutes just because India has 1.34 billion people, so that you can speak on their behalf. I actually just want to pick up on some common threads that have really come out. I'm sorry about that monologue, but I wanted you to be introduced to the variety, and I hope you've seen the similarities. And I'm going to start picking up some of those common threads and probably linking them back home, because as I said, I am representing the whole of Africa up here. And I just want to start from where Dr. Jha has stopped on some of the common threads that I'm seeing about decentralized systems, where you have a federal state and probably either semi-autonomous, autonomous, or some degree of decentralization, either of service delivery or financing in the health sector. I want to pick up that, I don't want to call it a conflict, but rather that, what's the right word? That context, perhaps, yeah? So there's the issue of decentralization, there's the issue of demand of tertiary services, where majority of the issues are at primary healthcare level. However, you kind of need to supply both at the same time, yes? I want to pick up the issue also of budgetary constraints that our colleague from Malaysia brought up. Health, you find most of the time, comes second, the budget allocation is probably only second to education, also because we have a very huge young population who also have education needs, yeah? And I just want to pick that common thread, probably start actually with my governor, because he's here, to reflect on these issues really. So it's the issue of decentralization, the issue of targeting in a largely informal sector, yeah, and the issue of balancing budgetary allocations when you have a very high young population.
Well, I think that's why the idea of insurance as a model for financing, because in the insurance model, but I am struck at the commonality listening to the panelists that basically it sounds like we are doing very much the same things. And when I reflect back on our conversations in Kigali about what is going on the African continent, is very much what our colleagues are saying. So I'm struck and encouraged that I think most of us are seeing it in the same space. So I'm not sure that we can do differently other than the point of innovation, so that perhaps the same resources are organized slightly better to achieve better outcomes.
Maybe you can just give us a comment on the way your county has taken up innovation in terms of targeting informal sector households to enroll them into the National Health Insurance Scheme.
The other thing, I mean, in listening to our colleague from India, you see, the indigent households, the very poor who can't afford, how do you identify them in a sort of robust way so that the insurance subsidy is targeted? And that's, I think, the point we can bring to the table, is that using, because our interventions are household based, we are able to identify the households, by name and number, if I put it like that, and therefore the subsidy is very direct to specific households, and that has helped us to perhaps maximize the resources that we are able to focus.
Thank you very much, Governor. If I can just pick up from there and probably, yes, absolutely.
I'd like to respond to one point which the Governor has made, in the sense that it's not only a targeting of the poorest households, it's also the targeting of services in terms of designing an insurance model about which level, which service provider will provide which services. For example, we substantially differ. Our state's model substantially differs from what Indonesia and Philippines have been attempting, in the sense that our insurance model, which is 12 years old, which is one of the oldest continuing model, does not bring in primary health care under insurance. Our government has clearly taken a position that the primary health care, the kind of a navigation, referral services, would continue to be delivered only by the public health institution. That is, if you go with a fever, the role of evaluating the patient, whether the fever is due to malaria, it may be due to multiple myeloma, it may be due to leukemia, that particular role is retained with the public health system, because that role is very high in volume terms for all developing countries. And the government institutions are much better positioned to deliver that role. If you redesignate that role to private sector has two problems. One, it does not have the capacity in all places to take that volume load. I mean, how do they deal with such a big volume of patients? Number two, the cost implications are very huge. I think our colleague touched upon the funding problem. Tamil Nadu has never had a funding problem in adding the insurance health care, because we have clearly demarcated that role to government institution, which means that the government's default health budget performs to play that role. And what we bring in through an insurance model is the therapeutic cost at secondary and tertiary level. That is, the government, the poor patient approaches a government hospital, he is diagnosed there, and the government hospital takes a decision on whether to treat the patient there or refer to a private hospital. By this, we have had a very substantial saving in costs, and funding an insurance-based healthcare over and above a pre-existing government resource-based, state-funded hospitals has not proved to be a problem. But when that particular role is given to private sector, then there is normally a tendency to push the primary level treatment to secondary. Obviously, private sector, works on, profit margins. So they would like to push that particular patient, and it is very difficult to convince a patient to take a particular line of treatment only in this hospital. At the end of the day, after empowering the patient to exercise a choice, it will be very difficult for you to tell the patient, no, you can only go to this type of hospitals. So if targeted properly, not only in terms of the population, but the cover and the roles, I think this problem of resources can be definitely overcome.
Thank you very much for that reflection. I think you bring out a very important, and you brought up a really interesting point there. I just asked Dr. Yes, no, you're looking at right. I want Dr. Misadi to make a quick comment on an issue she brought out, and that's probably coming up in this theme. How do you reorient your system? Yes, in as much as you want to empower patients to have choice, in as much as you want to empower patients to have access. However, you've got this issue of balancing cost. Yes, and in several countries in Africa, you've got several private sector players, not just private sector for profit. You've got private sector non-for-profit. Yeah? In our side of the world, we've got a lot of faith-based institutions that actually have brought access to health services in places like where government is not. So you really can't completely exclude them, even when times cost is heavy. So how do you strike that balance? And perhaps I'll ask you and our colleague from Malaysia to just quickly reflect on this issue.
Thank you. About this balancing, as I explained before, that we are facing the problems also by the amount of the premium and then the very generous benefit. So this is the problems because the premium is already stated not only $2 for the indigent people. So the response coming from the government is for the indigent people, the government pays for the premium, which is under $2. And then for the workers, the non-subsidized, they were paid the premium by themselves, and then also they have to pay some amount, not only $3, not over $3. So this is the problem, because the benefit is very generous. And for the indigent and poor, the local governments also, these are for the 220 million members. It's around 96,000 people, and 96 million people is the poor and the indigent. And then they were covered by the government, the premiums. And also the local government can also submit the people they stated poor and poor out of the 96 million. So they were paid the payment by the local government also. So this is the system in Indonesia. And we are still facing the difficulties in balancing the revenue and then the budget. And these problems is, of course, our governments, our stakeholders aware about this. And now we are in the running progress into reviewing the premiums and then the benefit based on the regulation, the presidential decree 87. There were stated three kind of steps that we can do. That first, that the government should raise the premium, but it is not politically chosen. And then the second is we can restructure the benefit, which is really because unpopular, because we already give them 100 and then we want to say that you are can give 80. So this is quite not easy to do. And then the third step is the government has the responsibility to do the added budget for this spending. So this is the situation in Indonesia, and then because of that, BPJS Kesehatan made up some programs just like the pay for performance to have the quality and more efficient healthcare services also. And then we develop also the IT system to do this more effective because we have not much employee in BPJS Kesehatan. We have to do more developing an IT system to get this integrated.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Dr. Ismail, I could ask you just for your quick reflection on the same, so that we can also give our other colleagues a chance. How do we navigate this divide, or this apparent divide here? There's the issue of budgetary constraints. Education needs money, health needs money. You need to involve private sector somehow because government is really not everywhere. How do we navigate this in our health systems?
It's very challenging. And in Malaysia, the government facility, and we have talked more about the primary care side for the time constraint. Let me just focus on primary care. In primary care, for the public sector is heavily subsidized, 95% or 100%. And but for the private sector is fee for service. So only those who can afford will go to the private sector. What happens is, maybe first too busy, they go to the private sector because they can afford for simple medications like that. But later on, they have to come back to public sector because if you need more to spend for healthcare, then they can't. And the out-of-pocket spending in Malaysia is high, almost 30%. Meaning, even though we have the public sector, but because of overcrowded, a long waiting time, we have no choice. Just go and go, you don't go to public sector for 3-4 hours is not something not right. So, but public sector have no choice, especially in urban area. And what happened was, in urban area, majority of the private sector is there. We as government public sector, we cannot continue building the clinic in the towns, big city, because it's expensive. The land is expensive, everything is expensive. But we have the pockets of population within the urban poor who already need care, but they can't afford. So government is trying to do something, but still it's not enough. So we are looking forward to have a system where, so-called integrated system where patients can go to the nearest facility, regardless public or private, but at the point of care they don't have to pay anything. So we are looking at that pathway. But the challenge now in the public sector, we try to engage private sector to deliver, but again, when talking about private sector, it's always dollars and cents. It's a business. So they can do promotive, they can do whatever the government want them to do. At the end of the day, what is the return for them? They ask for return on the investment. Yes. So it's a challenge in our system until we have a mechanism. So we are exploring that possibility, and until today we don't have social insurance. We have the private insurance, but the penetration is not that big. It's on 26% only. And so majority of the public, majority of the Malaysian population is still depending so much on the public sector. And as mentioned earlier, we are fighting for, every year we are fighting for the fund between defense, education. It is typical for the public funded system. So the option is you can continue like this because learning time is getting longer, lots of complaints, and we see a lot of complaints on the ground because why is it so long? Just for medication and to wait a few hours because it's not possible. But we have a small initiative to facilitate it, like we have drive-through pharmacy, we have a lot of simple things and innovation, but it doesn't solve bigger issue of how to make sure that care is affordable, accessible, and of certain quality. And patients have a choice, not patients don't have much choice.
Absolutely. You bring up now yet another conflict that's clearly coming up. How do you balance between choice, really, and the role of paternalism? Because it's not always possible to give choice. There's this nice term we like to call willingness to pay. everyone is willing to pay for their health, but they're not necessarily able. And how do you define able? I'm able this minute. After I visit the private hospital twice in Malaysia, I'm not able anymore. Is our system able to identify that I am not able that quickly, you know? And I want to just bring in Dr. Kam and Dr. Domingo lastly, just on this issue of regulation of the private sector, yes? How do we coexist in this system, but with government still giving a strong leading role, giving direction? This is the direction in which we are going, because left unregulated healthcare costs, as it has come through quite clearly, can become, you know, unbearable, astronomical, maybe even impractical, because we exist in a space where there are other sectors. So how does government play a regulatory role in a system where we're both providers, yes, ourselves, and purchasers from the private sector? Dr. Domingo and Dr. Kam, please.
Thank you for that. The Philippines has a big private sector. We have 60% of our healthcare delivery system under the private sector. And to answer your question, well, first when the hospitals open, they are licensed. And we already have standards for licensing that the hospitals has to follow before they are licensed. Then we do accreditation. They have to sign a performance commitment with us, and there we put in several standards of quality care that they have to follow. We continuously monitor them, and through our IT system, we can see the utilization and quality of care of these hospitals which we accredit. Well, maybe also a big thing is looking at their utilization. The provider payment. We are moving towards pay for performance global budget system under the universal health care. Here, we are leveraging the funds of PhilHealth to ensure quality care being given, especially by all our healthcare providers, especially the private providers. The private providers, the providers itself, sometimes they have problems in quality control. When monitoring quality, we have problems with them in fraud, quality issues, the way they give their services. Anyway, so that's where we are now in terms of leveraging our funds. We are not regulating directly the services once they are inside the system, but we try to do that through our funding mechanism, through the social health insurance.
Dr. Kam, I just give some quick, and as Dr. Kam gives his comments, I'd like the audience that may have a question, just prepare a question. I'll take a round of questions. Dr. Jack, I can see you want to make an intervention. Just so we have some questions after Dr. Kam.
Looking at the health financing, our government has considered that the public health and preventive medicine service will be covered by government needs from the categories. For the medical care service, needs curative treatment, medicine service, the health insurance will pay together with co-payment from the user. However, we know that some of the patients cannot afford with the medical costs. So we also have, besides the health insurance fund, we also have the healthcare fund for the poor. This healthcare fund for the poor, organized by local government. They mobilize the resource from the society and from the local public also. In fact, in reality, we also have some specific fund like cancer fund or health disease fund for the people suffering from the NCD, something like that. And looking at the how we can mobilize the private sector for healthcare for the people. Now, as you may know, that in Vietnam, all 95% of the health facility are public facility. So if the government try to persuade the private sector can contribute 10% of hospital bed in the future. And even among the public hospital, the government also encourage this hospital to be autonomous hospital. By the autonomous mechanism, the public hospital can mobilize the finance resource from the society to buy some high model device and model machine for creative and diagnosis. Yeah, so I think the reason because the government cannot enough to provide this new medicine, a new machine for the hospital. And as I mentioned that we have a plan to encourage the private health expand the number of talent to help insurance because I know that the private sector they will pay attention for to cover the gap between the social health and insurance because the number of patients still to pay to have to pay full payment, and also the number of the medical service and medicine, something like that, not to be covered by social health insurance scheme right now, so the private sector can enjoy to cover this invitation.
Thank you very much. I'll just take a round of questions now. Take advantage of this high-power delegation. You may not get a chance to ask direct questions to the governments of Asia. Yes.
Thank you. I have a question to my colleagues from the Philippines. Congratulations for your new law. It seems that there is so many challenges that you face by this new law. But you mentioned that you already have 98% for the population coverage. So my question is it a burden, this law for you, for your institutions, or is it a driving force for you to go further? My question is, are you involved stakeholders, for example, community organizations or professional organizations, to solve your problem to achieve universal coverage? And my second question is about, I hear that your country just issued the law of SIM tax. It means that you will get more money for PHES. So how you see this law to encourage you to go further to achieve universal coverage?
Thank you very much for that question. Definitely, we're looking at the law to further improve our efforts towards universal health care. Because even if we are 98% covered, we have, as I mentioned earlier, the point of service program. But this law institutionalized and gave us a legal cover to implement 100% coverage of our population. Therefore, it really helps a lot. Regarding the community organization, as I said, we are integrating healthcare delivery systems at the provincial level. So we are encouraging all types of healthcare providers at the local level to come into that integrated system to complement each other. Because in some areas there's a big private sector, in some areas a big public sector, and in last private sector. So we need cooperation of all these sectors. And lastly, sure issue on SIM tax. That's true, we are leveraging. We have a big portion of the SIM tax coming to PhilHealth. Our SIM tax of one cigarette pack right now, I'm not very sure of the amount, but it's maybe around 10 pesos. That's 1/5 of a dollar. No? But right now, there's a pending bill in our Congress increasing that to as much as almost $1.30. So there's a big jump of the SIM tax. No? And although we're using that now, we look in the future that will give us a bigger share, a bigger funding to implement universal health care. So we're really looking forward to that, and we're pushing that the SIM tax even becomes bigger than the 60 pesos, 90 pesos.
Okay, let's take a couple of more questions, please.
I didn't hear much about primary health, and even less about public health. And I imagine that the two are very significant in achieving the overall objective we see. And nowadays, the colleagues have something to say on those, particularly on the public health side.
Let's take one more question, please.
I have one last question, and this is about, again, technology, the role of technology, innovators in the private sector. All of you are in a capacity to leverage for provision of care. You either leverage from hospital-based care. But my question is, there are a lot of independent technology providers, low-cost diagnostic devices, telemedicine, new models of healthcare that are run or innovated from private enterprise, which kind of also reaches the last mile, which is kind of low cost. Most of these operators, distinct operators, they operate in silos. Do you have any thoughts of how they could be bundled into your schemes, over the future? And do you face any challenges in dealing with these operators? Just wanted to get your perspectives on that.
Thank you for such a great, conversation about your experiences in the countries that you're in. And I think I'll agree that a lot of what you said is what's happening actually in Africa. And I think for me, my question is, what does success look like for your specific countries? Because when you talk about 80% of the funding and resources going to what is supposed to be 20% of this, what is accessed by the population. And also looking at how traditionally we've defined the health system in that triangle, and yet the funding is an inverted triangle because we fund the lowest level the least, yet it's supposed to cover the most. And at what point then does the private sector play a role? Because when you look at the WHO model where primary health care is really a government-led or government-owned space, and the private sector, of course, will bring in technology and innovation, but when it comes to actual modeling of service delivery and products, then you want the private sector to be at the higher level where you have, a lower number of people but high margins. And so how do you balance that and make it a working model?
Hi, everybody. My question is about human resource capacity on data analysis. So as we expand coverage, obviously then we're going to have to expand capacity to analyze whether or not our strategies that we developed are having the intended outcome. It's always an issue of measurement. So how then does one plan for investing in the capacity of people to be able to assess the data, use the data, and consistently use it to inform service delivery? A lot of times we think we just have to keep expanding, but we don't know how do we know continually measure that? Thank you.
This was one on technology. Those I suggest we answer now. However, in your closing remarks, please make a reflection on the two last questions. The capacity to use what is coming out of the system, some level of intelligence to make a decision on where you're intervening. So it's not just expansion, but expanding with some level of intelligence coming out from the data. And the last question, which is, what does success look like in your country? So I'd like you to use those two questions to make your closing remarks. However, let's start by answering the first three questions. Dr. Umanach, you want to take on the public health one? Who's going to take on the data one? You want to take up the data one, and then we have one last question on technology and innovation. Thank you. Dr. Umanach.
Thank you. The one factor which is a big worry for me at a personal level, I'm basically a medical doctor who has quit medicine, and I'm a civil servant for 18 years. So I have worked extensively in public health system for 2 years before coming to civil service. The one worry for me personally and professionally is increasingly in developing countries where insurance-based healthcare models are being launched, they are being seen as a substitute for developing the public health system. It's a totally wrong approach which may give some benefit in short term, but in long term it is going to inflate the health costs and it is going to be a real burden on governments. I'll explain how we have tackled it and what is the problem. In our state, as I explained to Mr. Kavanagh on this thing, our investments on public health system have continued to grow at a larger pace than the cost of insurance in the last 10 years when the insurance system has been introduced. For example, the rate of growth of insurance premium from 2008-9 to 2019-20 have been lower than our investments in public health. So, how we have defined our system is a certain role is assigned to public hospitals. Number two, the public hospitals are being strengthened to take up a substantive role in the insurance-based model. If I can give some data, the annual premium which we give to the insurance company is close to 1,000 crores, which would translate to 10 billion Indian rupees. Out of this, the insurance company reimburses to hospitals all the service care provided. I'm happy to tell you that 37% of the reimbursement, which is 3.7 billion INR, comes back to the public health system. And this money is not taken back by the government. This money is reserved for the institutions. It is being apportioned for the common expenditure of the institution, for the relevant department. More importantly, 15% of that particular amount is being disbursed as an incentive for the doctors, paramedics, the lab technicians and all these things. This enthuses the public health system to take up a larger role in universal healthcare, even within an insurance-based model. Normally what happens, which is increasingly a dangerous trend, is the moment an insurance model is introduced, both the patient and public health system seem to think, till yesterday I was accessing a public health system, today I have got an insurance card which has entitled me to go to any hospital, so why should I go to a public health system? Let me just go to a private hospital. They do not acknowledge the fact that somebody is paying. Indirectly they are paying. It is at least not a major problem in countries or states where such an insurance-based UHC is being co-funded. That is, the patient also pays. In the Indian context, I will speak for the Indian context, it is 100% free for the target population. Rohit mentioned about the national coverage being the ratio of around 37-40%. In Tamil Nadu, state-sponsored insurance schemes cover 81% of all the households, and they do not pay. Only we pay. So, while we need to cover more, we also need to parallelly strengthen the public health system, because they only determine the price which is being fixed by the private sector. If public health institutions continue to play their relevant role in UHC, then the private sector cannot increase the price.
Because if we increase the price, then the people will flock to the public health system. But if we make the UHC totally contingent on private sector, initially, in the initial years, it will be a seamless flow. But at the end of the day, I mean, sorry to use a very strong word, we will become like US, where I mean, people are happy by paying more. So when I pay more, I am happy. The hospital is happy, the company is happy, everybody is happy. But the poor are unhappy. If we want the poor to be happy, we need to retain the role of public health systems, even in an insurance-based UHC.
Someone is looking at me because I'm coming in between your coffee break. 1 minute, Dr. Jam. 1. I promise I'll give you more time in the deep dive. Just take a minute to reflect on the question on data. Perhaps this is the time you also make your closing remark.
Okay. So, first coming to the question you were asking, with regards to data, we have a very robust IT infrastructure. We are engaging 4 private companies for providing the data support, and we are constantly on toes with regards to plumbing the issues which are being flagged about the data structure. This data is being used for measuring the hospital quality. We are in fact using it for developing a grading system for the quality. We are also using it for constantly developing a system of constant monitoring of cost of services. So costing of services and procedures is something we are looking towards. We are developing a module whereby we can measure the degree of utilization of these services and we can decide upon the costing. So this is another way we are using the data. Data is also used for deeper engagement with the beneficiaries. We have grievance redressal cells, we have call centers, and all of them are integrated through our IT system. We have feedback system. We have a hospital empanelment management system, and we are also captured. I will tell you with regards to the one question which was asked, that how we are catering to the innovation. The IT innovation is simply it would be little more, but I won't call it a panacea, but at the same time, IT is going to be the backbone of the UHC for the simple reason that it is going to control your access, it is going to control your cost of services, it is going to control the quality of services. As well, the fraud investigation about the private engagement and innovation, we are going to have a startup challenge in coming months, where we are going to call people who have done good work in terms of innovation, and also we are going to have we are working with the world's 5 largest and not the only largest, but the best companies who are working on the fraud investigation and medical insurance. So we are doing a POC with each one of them, each 5 one of them. So that is something we are learning from the private and we are engaging them. We have also set up an innovation cell where we are it's an innovation, it can be an incubation cell, and we are the economics of the scale which we have always been talking about. That can be a propellant for these innovations. So that is where we are engaging the private people, and due to lack of time, I'm just saying that we need to focus on 4 things: the access, the cost of the service. Cost of the service is very important, because this is how you will be controlling the private sector. Otherwise, you will have upcoding, you will have top-up charges, you will have outright denial of services. So this is very important, and also the financial part we are talking about, and finally the quality of the service. Here comes the role of the IT.
Thank you very much, Dr. You really Thank you very much, Dr. Dr. Domingo, maybe just your closing comments, and then we'll come progressively right.
Okay, thank you. We can summarize those, because a lot of this discussion will happen in deep dive. Otherwise, the next session panel will be late. So just a comment until we get to the deep dive.
Okay, I just want to make a comment before I close about the public health system that the good governor came out with, and that our Indian colleague came out. It's very interesting because you said that private care should be for the public health system, and social health insurance should not touch on that. Because we in the Philippines, we were touching on primary care insurance, and when the law came, it's further given to us. So I don't know how I should learn from the other countries who's implementing a different model. But anyway, closing, I would just like to say that for me, the most important support that can be given to pursuing universal health care is the IT challenge, because it touches on, it ensures faster claims processing, identification of fraud, costing system, and ensuring and monitoring quality systems in the way things are being implemented. And in the Philippines, maybe we're around 50 to 60% there. So I think every citizen is really entitled to quality services and not being impoverished when they seek health care. Therefore, it's up to the government to pursue universal health care in the area of population, services, and funding. That we should, government should vigorously pursue universal health care in this area, and the Philippines is really committed to that road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Rosati?
Thank you very much. About the IT, in my point of view, that national health insurance not only healthcare, not only health services, but it will develop the social platform in the nation based on big data and IT. Because such as Indonesia, we already have 221 million people join this program and around 640,000 visiting in the healthcare facilities. And from the membership, we have around 2,000 private company who join the program as the members, and they give all the email address. So we communicate with them with the email, and between them we can communicate also with the email that we develop the environment of the communication. So it's membership and health utilization also as a big data. And we develop also mobile JKN, mobile national health insurance, that every participant can access to the application by the unique number of identity, and they can have all the information there. So this is the IT developed for the member. It's very rapid, and also we have the innovation with the feedback to the providers, that the members are satisfied with the healthcare that the providers give, with the go-through audit mechanism that are integrated into the mobile JKN, which is the member after the healthcare services, they can directly give the report they satisfied or not in the mobile JKN. So this is becoming the feedback, and we can monitor all the healthcare providers, because all the providers should implement our primary care application in the primary care, and then the verification claim in the hospital. So this is integrated into one database, and I think this is the big social platform for nation.
Thank you. Indeed, before you share. Thank you very much, Dr. Rosati. Dr. Kao, just your closing comments.
Okay, I think all of you know that every country want to apply IT benefits for health management. In my country also, in the health insurance system, we I'm very proud to say that we apply IT for health insurance management is very well. In terms of by applying IT, IT is an important part of claim review assessment before reimbursement. So every day we collect data from hospital and health facility to health insurance to check and to collect data for management, for monitoring, and for studying also. The major thing we are concerning now, besides apply IT, we also talk about how to manage the quality of data, because from the insurance environment, there's something, there are too many limitations in terms of the the data from the hospital. Sometimes because of collect money, they may make some mistake. So we need to manage the data. If we have good quality of data, we can see what is happening in reality in terms of healthcare problems.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Dr. Sam. Okay, Ismail, you get 30 seconds because your colleagues do
30 seconds.
all the rest.
I think quite similar. IPS and it's very important not only to improve the studies and managing data. So one of the new initiatives under Malaysia government is developed International Data Warehouse, where it's going to provide a platform for sharing of data between public and private. And also, under current government, it just celebrated the first anniversary. They're going to, I think, move forward with the email, electronic medical record. We have a small electronic medical record project, but now they're going to the nationwide where we can share the data with public and private.
Thank you so much.
No.
You can have 10.
In addition to what my colleagues have said, our state uses the IT data for future investment decisions too. It's a very interesting thing because I wanted to highlight. We analyze the trend of the service delivery across various private and government institutions, and we analyze the market share of government institutions in each of these domains. And the investment, the public investment decisions on where to invest, in which specialty, which domain, we derive from the data output. To quote an example, if our cardiac share in government institutions is very less in the claims, then we take the decision to install a chain of capital admissions. I mean, this is something which is in addition to what my colleagues have said.
Thank you so much, Dr. Omanan. Please join me in just giving a round of applause for my very, very able panel. I don't have time to summarize what they've said, but you've all had. I think my final comment, in addition to thanking each one of you, is just to remind all of us that not just governments are accountable to how they use resources, but so is private sector. How you use all the resources of this world, be they environmental, be they human, be they financial. Sometimes our private sector hats get on too tight that you push a brand instead of pushing an agenda. So let's be careful where that divide goes. We are all equally responsible. We are all equally responsible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to the panelists. If I can ask you just to remain here for a minute, I would really appreciate it for a photo op. I just want to announce some logistics. We are taking a break. We are already 15 minutes behind schedule.
So maybe a 10-minute.
There you go.
Break
if we can have
I'm so sorry because our next panel is very, very exciting. They are going to provide an answer to some of these. So 10 minutes. Bring your coffee in if we can sneak it in.
Outside to the right.
Please come back and we'll continue this conversation. We have the day ahead. There are lots more questions and we have these people as captive audience. I'm going to lock the doors so they can't leave and we will make sure they're well taken care of till the end of the day. But please, 10 minutes and do come back here for the next round and then we break for lunch.
Thank you. Logistics to the right is tea and to the left are the washrooms.
Thank you.